Shibai Otsutsuki, one of the most mysterious characters in the Boruto universe. This for the most part stems from him being the definition of overpowered, but there's also the underlying mystery behind his true identity. You see, ever since the character was introduced in chapter 75 of Boruto's original manga, you've had theories about him being the father of Kaguya, Amado's secret identity, or even that Boruto awakened his Jougan by having Shibai's cells implanted within him. Now these theories do seem a bit far-fetched, crazy even, but just to be clear, I'm not here to be the voice of reason, because what I'm about to say goes even further. You see, I don't just believe that Boruto possesses the power of Shibai Otsutsuki. I believe that he is Shibai himself, as in his reincarnate. Now all of this really stems from all those theories that pointed out Boruto's connection to Shibai Otsutsuki. Whether it's them possessing similar abilities, Boruto having Shibai's horn, him having the Jougan, and even Momoshiki stating that Boruto strongly inherited the powers of the Otsutsuki. So everything I just mentioned led to this point. This is the culmination. This is the endgame. And of course, I can prove it. Now for this to make sense, let's go back to chapter 13 of Boruto to Blue Vortex, where just before Jura could eliminate Boruto, the bug Shinju known as Mamushi interrupted him. This then led to Jura saying that Boruto is very lucky. It's as if the heavens are decreeing that he must remain alive. Perhaps this is some divine intervention. Now as I said in my review for chapter 13, this isn't Jura outright confirming that a literal god is intervening in these events, but it could also be the case. You see, this isn't the first time Jura alluded to this at some point in the series. If you go back to chapter 4 when the Shinjus first appeared on panel and Boruto later escaped the dimension, Jura once again said that Boruto was lucky. Back then he blamed it on the fact that they just awakened self-awareness, thus overflowing with curiosity and thirst for knowledge, which at that point in time surpassed his original instinctual drive to devour Boruto. So in a sense, the reason why he didn't attack him is because he wasn't ready to evolve, nor did he want him dead yet, which all stems from them having self-awareness, something they've never had before. We could even trace this back to prior events in the series where Boruto should have perished but didn't, such as his fight versus Momoshiki, him defeating Boro, being resurrected by Momoshiki, and even surviving omnipotence. These are all events where Boruto came close to dying, which is typical for the shonen protagonist, but that doesn't mean it also can't be a more significant part of the story being told. Now this is where prescience enters the equation, which is pretty much an ability that allows the user to see all possible futures. And as explained in chapter 13, this Shinjutsu ability originated from Shibai Otsutsuki himself, and that's because Kashin Koji awakened it due to having Shibai's cells implanted into his body. This for some reason has been overlooked because if this ability originated from Shibai, that also means that he possessed the ability to see all possible futures, which is very significant since he would have been able to see something very important, which is a world void of his own existence. This once again takes us back to chapter 75 where Amado claimed that Shibai is no longer alive. All that exists are his remains. He then went on to theorize that Shibai either ascended to a higher dimension or that he was killed by someone else. Now this is just a theory presented by Amado, but Momoshiki did go on to confirm that he is right about one thing, which is that Shibai is no longer in this dimension. So it could be the case that Shibai did ascend to another dimension, but it could also be the case that he simply died. That's because him ascending to a higher dimensional plane or going to the Pure Lands constitutes the same thing, which is him no longer being in this dimension. So the only thing Momoshiki's statement confirms is that Shibai is no longer alive in the original sense of the word, or the basic sense of the word, but it doesn't explain his current state of existence. Now staying on chapter 75, which is really just the gift that keeps on giving by the way, but there's another important reveal that took place in this chapter, which is the timeline of Akebi's death, Akebi being the daughter of Amado. This is very significant since the concept of reincarnation requires the act of both death and rebirth, which in most cases happens in close proximity, timeline-wise. You see, Amado told Naruto that his daughter died 12 years ago a few chapters prior, which by itself doesn't seem that important. But then Boruto went on to point out that it's also around the same time that he was born for some reason. This information done by Boruto seems a bit odd since it adds nothing to what's currently being said in chapter 75, which means that it was added for other reasons. Because as I said before, Akebi dying 12 years ago means nothing by itself, and it being around the same time Boruto was born would have been obvious to anyone paying attention since Boruto is 12 years old at this point in time. So why have the character himself point that out within the story as well? What is Ikimoto trying to imply? Well, let's go back to Akebi for a second. What's also revealed in this chapter is that she suffered from a terrible disease. It was an unknown cause, no drug or cure was effective. It was so puzzling that all doctors had given up on it. Now, of course, it is possible that she just had a weird illness that led to her death, but what if that wasn't the case? What if Akebi was originally Shibai's reincarnate before Boruto? Now, I'm sure you guys are probably like ready to leave the video, and that's fine, but at least hear me out before you guys do. By the way, 75% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, so if you are enjoying the content, drop a like for the algorithm and subscribe for more videos just like this one. With that said, let's get back to the video. Now, as I said before, this might sound crazy, I know, but it does make sense. In fact, there's precedence for this being the case in Naruto's original manga. Let's take a look at Ashura and Indra, the sons of Hagoromo Otsutsuki, who somehow found a way to defy conventional death and later reincarnated as Naruto and Sasuke. Now, this didn't start with them. These guys have been reincarnating over and over again for the better part of a millennia. So just as how they manifested as Hashirama and Madara prior to Naruto and Sasuke, there were many other lesser known reincarnates as well. They just weren't relevant to the plot itself, okay? Now, the reason why that's important to note is because people believe that Ashura and Indra just possessed Naruto and Sasuke, which implies that they're separate entities. Yet if you go with the explanation provided by Hagoromo himself, that couldn't be furthest from the truth. You see, as stated in chapter 670, even after their flesh perished, the chakra the two owned continued to reincarnate across time without vanishing, over and over again. He even goes as far as saying that Ashura has reincarnated as you, which means Naruto is Ashura's current iteration, his next life. What this also confirms is that one's reincarnate can be different from oneself. I mean, the sage himself outright says that Naruto's slightly dumb maverick nature is so unlike that of the previous reincarnates, even Ashura himself. And the reason why that's relevant to Shibai being Boruto's reincarnate is because it explains why Boruto's personality can be different from Shibai's while being an incarnation of Shibai. It also explains why Shibai can reincarnate as Akebi and later reincarnate as Boruto. The flesh itself or the personality of said flesh isn't relevant. The most important factor is the soul. With that said, the soul is also tied to chakra as stated by Hagoromo, which means that both Akebi and Boruto possessed Shibai's powerful chakra. Now, this powerful chakra is also what led to Akebi's death because her human body wasn't compatible with Shibai's energy, thus the unknown illness no one could identify. This makes perfect sense when you take into account how Ashura and Indra reincarnated. It was always through their own genetic descendants, that being the Senju, the Uzumaki, and the Uchiha. Even though the conflict itself was more so between the two brothers whose souls reincarnated through chakra, they always chose their own descendants. Why is that? Well, I believe that it has something to do with genetic compatibility or wavelengths. This is similar to how everyone isn't compatible with karma, which is why it took Ishiki over 2 millennia to find a proper vessel. The same applies to the process of reincarnation. So in essence, Shibai reincarnated over and over again until he found a proper body, that body being Boruto's. Now, the reason why Boruto is compatible with Shibai and Akebi wasn't is because Boruto won the genetic lottery, which is obviously referring to the fact that his father is a descendant of Hagoromo and his mother is a descendant of Hamura. This means that Boruto possesses the genetic code compatible with an Otsutsuki, at least when it comes to reincarnation. Now, this goes a bit further because you could argue that Shibai could have reincarnated within one of Hagoromo's other thousands of descendants from the past. So why is Boruto special? Well, this is all speculation, of course. Obviously, this is a theory video, but it is possible that they didn't possess enough of the genetic strand needed to manifest this power. This is also supported in the series, by the way, which came in the form of Kurama revealing that Himawari has a greater affinity to his chakra than any of his other hosts, including Naruto. That's because she has both the bloodlines of Hamura and Hagoromo, which likely manifested the parent chakra or genetic code of Kaguya, thus making Himawari more Otsutsuki than any individual carrier that only possessed one specific strand from either of Kaguya's sons. So in a sense, the same would apply to Boruto as well, making him a successful reincarnate, one that can truly manifest Shibai's powers, one of those powers being the Jougan. Now, this isn't anything new when it comes to Naruto. We've seen people being able to manifest another person's power through possessing their chakra before, such as Madara literally awakening Hagoromo's Rinnegan by awakening Hagoromo's chakra, or even Kakashi awakening Obito's Sharingans after being imbued by Obito's chakra. This might sound crazy in any other setting, but in this universe, crazy is the norm. So this is why Boruto's Rasengan Uzuhiko looks similar to whatever Shibai was doing in that one panel. This is why Boruto's horn looks similar to Shibai's instead of Momoshiki's, especially when every other vessel shown so far has horns resembling the person who implanted karma. This is why Boruto strongly narrated the powers of the Otsutsuki, such as the Jougan. It isn't a coincidence, it's all according to Shibai's plan. With that said, what is Shibai's plan? Yeah, he wants to reincarnate, but why? Why did he spend all of that time reincarnating over and over again until he found the right body? But this all goes back to prescience. See, I don't think Shibai willingly ascended to another plane of existence, nor was he killed by anyone. I think he flew too close to the sun, meaning he became too powerful. More powerful than his own body could contain, which led to his death. Now, we've seen this in Naruto before as well. Amado was forced to take in the chakra absorbed by infinite Tsukunomi, which led to him swelling as if he was about to burst. This was pointed out by the characters themselves. And then you have the case of Toneri accidentally absorbing the power of the sun, which led to the same effect. So it is possible that Shibai experienced a similar phenomenon after consuming his last chakra fruit, and as a last resort he chose the process of reincarnation similar to Ashura and Indra, likely because he didn't have a vessel prepared. Now it does go a bit deeper than that, since if the argument is that Otsutsukis can't reincarnate successfully in non-Otsutsukis, why did Shibai believe that he would eventually get a proper body? Well, this once again goes back to prescience. You see, Shibai knew that he would eventually reincarnate in a successful vessel because he saw the future in which it happened. All he needed to do was choose that path, his best possible future. That future is now our current timeline. Now this isn't the only explanation because, as I explained before, as a reincarnate, you are that person. So while Boruto is technically Shibai, he isn't the same as Shibai. Similar to how Naruto is Ashura's reincarnate, but slightly different. So for Shibai to return in his truest self, the original Shibai that existed in the past, he has to exist separate from his reincarnates. Now this might seem impossible, but it actually isn't. You see, there's this thing called parallel incarnation, which suggests that a soul can exist in multiple forms or bodies simultaneously, instead of undergoing the traditional sequential process of reincarnation. This idea is different from the more common belief in reincarnation, where a soul is born, dies, and then reborns into a new body over a linear timeline, which would be the form of reincarnation used by Ashura and Indra. So in the case of Shibai, it is possible that he did indeed reincarnate as Boruto, as I stated before, but the original version of him also still exists at the same time, just in another form, which should be spiritual form, likely in another plane of existence. This then opens up the possibility of Shibai actively manipulating the events of Boruto's story to ensure that he's able to fully reincarnate through Boruto's body in his original form. Now this could be for selfish reasons, but it could also be for a greater purpose. See, the Otsutsuki lore is very extensive, and so is the clan itself. As you know, Kaguya, when she arrived on the planet, fell in love with an emperor called Tenji, and later had two sons called Hagoromo and Hamura. Now after she was sealed on the moon by these same two sons, one of them remained on the planet, that being Hagoromo, while the other one went to the moon, that one being Hamura. Now we all know the story of Hagoromo's sons Ashura and Indra creating the Senju and Uchiha clan amongst other bloodlines. So the focus of this section of the video will be on Hamura's bloodline, which would be the Hyuga and the Otsutsuki clan on the moon. You see, Hamura created a pathway between the planet and the moon itself, which is what we see the characters use in Naruto the Last. This simply means that Hamura was able to populate the moon and create the Hyuga branch on the planet by procreating with humans. This would explain why both bloodlines, both on the moon and the planet, all look like regular humans with the added benefit of having Byakugans. This makes perfect sense as it pertains to genetics, since Hamura was already half human, so mating with another human would reduce the Otsutsuki gene over time. Though Toneri, who's a member of the moon branch, still possessed a lot of the traits of the Otsutsuki, and so did his father, which means that his bloodline is likely separate from everyone else's. See, I believe that Hamura not only mated with regular humans, but also an actual Otsutsuki. Now this then brings us to Otehime, the daughter of the Dragon King, who I believe is actually Hamura's wife. Now Otehime is one of the characters from the story of Urashima Taro, the person who influenced the creation of Urashiki Otsutsuki. Similar to how Kaguya was influenced by Princess Kaguya, Momoshiki with Momotaro, Kinshiki with Kintaro, and even Ishiki with Isshin Boshi. They were all influenced by deities in Japanese mythology. Though what's important to note here is that the Otsutsuki clan themselves, or itself, is still a driving force in the Naruto world, or in Boruto's universe. Universe, and Shibai might be a rogue Otsutsuki. The reason why I believe this to be the case is based on the fact that it's directly stated that the Otsutsuki should procure the chakra fruits and return them to the clan. They shouldn't take them for themselves, or at least there's a limit to how much they can take. This stems from the fact that the only reason why Momoshiki was sent to take down Kaguya is because she consumed the chakra fruit instead of bringing it back to the clan, which means it's illegal to do so. Yet Shibai for some reason went around and devoured so many chakra fruits that he evolved or maybe died, whichever way you want to take it. The act itself should still be illegal in this case, which means that Shibai was likely operating on his own, thus there being no mention of a partner. So what I'm saying is that it is possible that what Shibai is doing could be for a greater purpose, such as going against the Otsutsuki similar to what Kaguya did. Now the only problem with this is the fact that Toneri implied that the Otsutsuki clan no longer existed in Boruto episode 53, but that doesn't make sense based on what Urashiki said about the palace of the Dragon King. You see, the Otsutsukis are derivatives of the Shinto gods themselves. So this family tree shows 3 generations of Hyuga, who was later ruled over by a man named Hori, who later married the Dragon King's daughter Otehime, as I mentioned before. In addition to that, it also shows the entire family tree of the Otsutsuki. So Yamatsumi is the god of the mountains, seas, and wars in Japanese mythology, who later had a daughter called, and I'm going to try here guys, Konohana Sakuya Hime. Now she was known as the Blossom Princess and the goddess of all volcanoes and symbol of delicate earthly life. This is oddly similar to how Kaguya's name also translates to either blossom or shining princess as well, which likely means that Kaguya is a derivative of Konohana Sakuya Hime. I think I said it right there, but yeah. Anyways, this also means that Kaguya's sons Hagoromo, Hamura, and Black Zetsu are also derivatives of Hori, Hodori, and Hosuseri, the sons of Konohana Sakuya Hime. Now this then brings us back to Hori, who later married and had a child with Otehime, the daughter of the Dragon King, also known as Watatsumi or Ryuji, the same Dragon King that was mentioned in Boruto episode 53, when Urashiki sealed away Toneri. What this implies is that if Hamura's backstory is similar to that of Hori, that simply means that he was able to get in contact with other members of the Otsutsukis, one he later had an intimate relationship with, thus creating Toneri's bloodline. What this would also mean is that similar to how Otehime abandoned their child and husband, the same could have happened to Hamura and his version of the Dragon King's daughter. That would explain why Toneri's and his bloodline possesses more Otsutsuki traits than that of Hamura's other descendants. He simply possesses more of the Otsutsuki gene. By the way, some of this isn't even a theory, since based on Toneri's own dialogue with Urashiki, it does appear that they were once in contact with other Otsutsukis.
It seems that I found you at last. It took me a while, Lord Toneri Otsutsuki.
So Urashiki, who's an actual full-blooded Otsutsuki from the main Otsutsuki clan, refers to Toneri as Lord Toneri Otsutsuki. That in and of itself is very odd. Why is Toneri, who is supposedly just a descendant of Hamura and some random human, referred to as Lord? It just doesn't make sense. Then Urashiki went on to say that they're from the same clan, which Toneri replied by saying that he thought the Otsutsuki clan's fate was going to end with him. Urashiki then said that the main family doesn't feel that way. This part of the conversation implies that they're both referring to the main Otsutsuki clan family, which Toneri seems to be aware of. However, what's interesting here is that Toneri later said that if they exist, why did they forsake us for 1,000 years? This simply means that Toneri knew about the main family of the Otsutsuki and knows that he's directly connected to them, but for some reason he thought they no longer existed. He thought he was the only one left. What this could mean is that either the text Toneri got his information from got tampered with for some reason and thus not holding the truth of the past, or it could also be the case that the people themselves had their memories altered, thus remembering and passing on a distorted history. This was likely done by the main family of the Otsutsuki branch, who actually kept watch over the sector to some degree, as stated by Urashiki. And when I say altered their memories, I'm referring to the ability Kaguya used to change the memories of the humans on the planet, or it could have also been omnipotence. So in a sense, Toneri is likely referred to as Lord Toneri by Urashiki because he's a descendant of the Dragon King's daughter. In addition to that, he's also likely a member of the 2 families within the branch of the Otsutsuki, one being from Kaguya's father Yamatsumi, and the other being from Hamura's wife's side, which which would be Watatsumi, the Dragon King. Now all of this ties back into the plot of Boruto and Shibai, because if the palace of the Dragon King still does exist, and if what Urashiki said about them watching over the sector this entire time is true, that also means that there are other Otsutsukis running around somewhere. Also, if they have the ability to wield omnipotence, such as to change the memories of the Moon Branch, that simply means that you have more than one Otsutsuki god who can rival Shibai. By the way, this was hinted at by Momoshiki when he asked Boruto if he has ever contemplated how many times an Otsutsuki who became a god may have previously manipulated humankind's memories, which at that time seemed very odd. Because what reason would Boruto have to contemplate the effects of omnipotence if this is the first time he's experiencing it? So in universe, it doesn't even make sense to ask Boruto this question, so it was placed there for the audience, obviously. Now before you guys say that Toneri wouldn't have been affected by omnipotence since he would be Otsutsuki, I have thought about this, and while it could be the case, it doesn't necessarily need to be. We have seen characters who are descendants of the Otsutsuki, such as Sasuke himself, being affected by the ability. So clearly you have to be more than whatever percentage Otsutsuki Sasuke is to be unaffected. Now Toneri should be more Otsutsuki than Sasuke due to his great-great-great-great-grandmother's lineage, but it's also still diluted based on who mixed with that bloodline afterwards. It's just not as diluted as the others. Then again, it wouldn't even matter since the point is that omnipotence was used long before Toneri was ever born. So it's not that Toneri was affected by omnipotence, he was just fed false information by the people that were. Now I could be wrong, and maybe Shibai is just trying to rule the cosmos, but he might be a bit more complex. Who knows? That would be interesting. But yeah, let me know your thoughts down below, and if you guys enjoyed it, drop a like, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.